Hello and welcome to Cision's webinar, The Art of Influencing Influencers. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule today. We're really excited to have you join us along with two of our foremost friends and experts in the influencer marketing space. We are going to be going through a number of different topics, but we do expect to have time for Q&A at the end. So as we're running through the material, please feel free to submit questions for us, and we'll try and get through everything we can at the end of the hour, as well as we can follow up with you if you have direct questions for Marian, myself, or Paul. I'm Daniel Watson. I am our Senior Director here at Cision of Growth and Digital Marketing. We're really excited to have our two speakers joining us today to talk through these key areas. So first, I want to introduce Marian Salzman. Marian is the chairman of the Global Collective at Havas, as well as the CEO of North America. Marian is one of the most well-awarded female public relations professionals that I know, and we're really excited to have her on board today to talk through some of these very tactical and very useful thoughts as she executes for her clients. Mary, you want to talk a little bit about Havas and your specialty and what you bring to the table for your clients?
Sure. Look, Havas is a medium-sized agency. We pride ourselves on being agile, which means working in real time. It's messier when you work in real time. So I think one of the things I'm happy to discuss today is how we engage with influencers. And it's actually a relationship, and relationships have good days and bad days, and they go through cycles. We also take pride in still being a media relations shop. I mean, I think we don't delude ourselves that we're going to all the time sell our clients the big, bold idea. We know that ad agencies and digital agencies and influencer agencies are all in there selling our clients just as we are. So what we like to do is agree on KPIs and sell them pretty darn good work that beats the KPIs we sign up for.
That's fantastic, and I know we're going to dive a little bit more in this session as where does influencer marketing fit specifically versus traditional media relations, and how do you look at that for your clients and for the good work that you're doing as how that fits together. Also with us, we're very happy to have Paul Kontonis, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at WHOSAY, and Paul has worked at a number of key digital media properties. And Paul, you want to tell us a little bit about kind of WHOSAY and how you fit into the influencer marketing mix?
Sure. Thank you, Daniel and Marian, and hello, everyone. So WHOSAY is an influence marketing company. We power influencer marketing campaigns and content programs for advertisers that are trying to reach specific audiences, that are trying to achieve certain goals. We do that through working with the talent, developing the right relationships with the talent, producing the content, distributing that, and measuring it. And we've been at it for it's about 7 years total as a company. We've done close to 400 different campaigns for many major brands, and really see that this is one of the key components for an advertiser's marketing and media strategy.
Awesome. So we're going to dive right in, and I think the best place for us to dive right in, and I think one of the most important things that's often overlooked, is the beginning and thinking about what does success look like with influencer marketing, and as far as making that strategy, as far as why undertake that versus putting your dollars behind paid, putting your time and effort and your personnel. So as we start with you, Marian, tell me a little bit about how you evaluate success and why you're coaching your clients to do what they're doing.
First of all, I think we recognize there's traditional media, there's social media, and there's human media. And to me, influence is in the human media realm. If I reach the person who reaches 138,000 people, I reach the person who reaches 70,000 people, but they're all part of an aficionado group, we've been very successful. So it's in the beginning, we need to lay out what does the dream scenario look like? What kind of metrics are we going to achieve? It's easy to hit a really big number with the Huffington Post, but it might be much more effective to hit a big number with a mommy blogger who also dug in on their own various social streams. If you think about in a regional marketplace, there's a great deal of waste in some forms of national media. So if I'm doing a regional launch, oftentimes I'm going to try to reach somebody who has great regional reach. I couldn't care less how deep they are outside San Diego. I need to be sure they motivate all the people, the right people within San Diego. So the human media element, traditional, social, digital, and human, to me, influence is really buying the human media, introducing the right ideas to the right people who are going to share them with the right people and have it grow geometrically.
Paul, throw that same question over for you, and I know you look at it a little bit differently, even kind of calling influencers talent as far as how you're bringing it together.
Yeah, and I think for us, what we always like to talk about is starting with the objectives. And we clearly try to put every campaign, every program into various objectives, starting with awareness, which is looking at recall and reach, engagement, that's looking at what kind of actions somebody is going to take with this content, clicks, likes, comments, shares, anything like that. Sentiment, is this a sentiment-based campaign where we can change the way people are feeling about your brand and look for those positive comments? Or is this action-based, right? Is this something we're looking to convert your consumers into customers or do some kind of conversion along the funnel? Not only do these need to get set, but for us, we really, based on our experience, are pushing to the brands and the marketers that we work with is you need to rank these. You need to know what your real primary purpose is here, because based on how you rank these, this will set the direction of the creative execution. It'll help you determine the right talent. It'll inform the distribution and media plan and really help drive the overall metrics. And I think that's one of the most important things, we get very attracted to, and we always talk about we do influence marketing because people are very drawn to the talent side, the influencer, micro-influencer, mommy blogger, celebrity, whatever you want. They're all influencers of some kind. That is the sexy side that everyone looks at, and you've got to start first knee-deep in the objectives.
When you're, as a follow-on to that, when you're coaching your clients and knowing that different clients are probably looking at different metrics as more important for their business, do you see trends as far as what's the most successful when you're working with agencies or brands as far as when they're reporting back at the end that is it the awareness metrics, is it ROI, is it conversion? Where are you really seeing the most success for successful programs?
They all can be successful, but it depends on which one you want to really focus on.
Yep.
You can't be awareness and conversion and sentiment all at the same time.
Yep.
And so our point of view is constantly you got to be one of these
right.
and focus your efforts on one of those. If it's awareness and you're going for efficient reach, great. We can do that. That can be done. Mm-hmm. It can be measured and it can be delivered. If you're going for conversions and really looking for some type of action along the way, that can be done. That can be measured. That can be forecasted. All of these things are predictable and forecasted. You just can't be all things to all people at once. You really just have to pick one and go.
And Marian, knowing that you work across a lot of different industries, healthcare, retail, lifestyle, how do the metrics vary, and do you see trends in those individual areas as far as what's most important to your client?
Well, to reinforce what Paul said, first of all, you need to know what your client's going to value. You need to know what you're going to value on their behalf. So if I'm talking about an eyeglass manufacturer, then I'm talking about opticians as a point of reference. If I'm talking about a store opening for a fast fashion brand, I'm probably talking about college women with significant social following. Mm-hmm. Each of our campaigns is organized uniquely. There's not a one-size-fits-all, and it's not even a Chinese menu where I go to column A and column B. It's much more what is success going to look like and what kind of numbers can I count on from the influencer component. For us, most of our campaigns are three parts. They're earned media, which we then amplify through paid, through boosting and amplification. And then there's influence media so we can get the buzz and the conversation going. In a strange way, when I launched the word metrosexual, which is already almost 15 years ago, in many ways was the ultimate influencer launch because we threw it into the Sunday Times style section. We worked the people that work the comments page. And in working with that, we saw something bubble up, and then we just kept rolling with it. Mm-hmm. I don't think in those days we knew to call it influencer marketing. I think we called it buzz or word of mouth. And there were just some people that we valued more than other people as buzzing bees.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of following up on that, from that, so I know we have a very specific way that as far as how you go to market and really start from those success metrics to really start building out the list of the field of play for you for your market. Can you tell us a little bit about how you do that?
So I call it the 10 by 10 by 10 strategy, but whenever we're starting, even if it's a new business assignment, we say, okay, who are the 10 people that need to spread the good word? Mm-hmm. Okay, who are the 10 people we want them to spread it to? And we create almost a simulation where first 10, and then each one of those 10 off of that tranche, at which point you're at 100, and we say, okay, and if we play this out, what would it look like if 1,000 people were on our side? Who are those 1,000 people? It's not going to be absolutely right. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be precise as you might be if you're only putting 10 people into the mix. But for us, it's about how do we drive positive momentum, mm-hmm. and who's going to pass it along. Mm-hmm. because the human dimension of it is not just sharing it, posting it, but it's actually sharing it, engaging with other people about it. So another thing we launched was Giving Tuesday. Mm-hmm. And in launching Giving Tuesday, we absolutely, the kinds of people we identified as influencers probably wouldn't be influencers if we were talking about Fashion Week.
Of course.
People who are into Giving Tuesday were not necessarily the Fashion Week crowd, mm-hmm. but we needed to know who are the people that are influenced the most by the Salvation Army, who are the people influenced the most by the University of Michigan Law School, who are the people influenced most by the Lutheran Church.
Yep.
And we started to lay out individual steps, so who we have to bring in to be sure that we're going to get the kind of momentum we need.
Yep.
And there are some groups that are much tougher. I mean, we did a campaign around Giving Tuesday a couple of years in to raise money for Navajo scholarship. Mm-hmm. It is very hard to find Navajo influencers in the social media.
Yep.
Very hard. In contrast, it is very easy to find law school alumni who care about their school.
Yep.
So you have to be kind of conscious of how realistic is it to get to the 1,000. Once you get to the 1,000, I'm going to argue you're going to have success. If you have this working playbook of 1,000 people, it'll be okay.
Very cool. Paul, knowing that a lot of what you do is really isolate on a qualitative scale, it's a little bit of a different process for you as far as how you start building those lists. Tell us a little bit about how you go about that.
Right. So everything for us after the objectives have been set is then really understanding who the audience is that we're trying to reach. This is beyond the demographics. This is looking at fans of the brand, competitive fans, trying to understand who the audience's passion, or what the audience's passion points are, and really profiling. And sometimes we can use 90 different points of criteria to understand exactly who our target audiences are. I would say on average, every program that we do have at least 10 different audience kind of splits and variations of that we're looking to target. From there, we can then map to the affinity to who they like, who are the people who influence them. Mm-hmm. So to take Marian's example of finding the Navajo influencers, right? People who are Navajo to reach the Navajo community, as not specifically that example, but when we have those cases where we try to find people within a community, we also look at who influences that community. And when you look at the data, and we're leveraging first-party data here through our apps and platform, we sometimes find it's not who you expect. Mm-hmm. And they could be celebrities, people who are considered celebrities. They could be trailblazers within pop culture and the new forms of media. They could be people that were born from social, micro-influencers, mommy bloggers, whatever they are. I think we look at it and say, we want to work with every level of influencer at all times. Take the audience data, map through the affinities of what the audience, going from the audience back up to who influences them. Who do they engage with? And you might be surprised at somebody who you don't expect versus trying to maybe hit it head on by going from someone within that community. Once you kind of understand them, then you have to evaluate with them with regards to what does their fan base really look like, what does their content look like, what does engagement look like for them, do they fit within your budget? We are fans of working with maybe fewer people in a program versus more so we can maximize the dollars and time spent. Every person you engage with to create content is a process, is contracting and SAG and FTC compliance. And, we see in the data almost every program where someone's been gifted something, 93% of those posts are incorrectly labeled to the FTC. And so we don't want those issues. Yeah. We want to work with people who are professional, who are manageable, who will actually be creative and give a creative element into the process as well. So, it's objectives, it's going into targeting, and then finally looking at the quote-unquote talent you will work with.
Yeah. I think as a little bit of a follow-up for that, especially, besides both approaches and, diving into the fact that this is an art more than a science, and many times for that, if you're a new brand, especially you don't have historical relationships with key influencers or it's a crowded or fragmented space, what tips can you think and how do you build that strategy for either new entries into a market, new products, new brands, et cetera, et cetera?
So this is interesting. This has actually been in the news recently. There was a example with a brand, I won't name them, Dove, where they basically tried to approach a lot of influencers by being very aggressive, on their social platforms. And look, I think it's a misguided approach, thinking that you can identify who the influencers are and start just immediately leaving comments and liking and just trying to hit them very aggressively that way and expect that they're going to be open to wanting to work with you without understanding what do they like to talk about, what are their interests really, and developing a relationship over time, especially if you're a new brand and you don't have those relationships. I think you really need to get to know who the influencers are, get to know what they're interested in, get to know who they're influenced by, what they like, what they engage with, and build a relationship over time. And don't look at them as a means to reach an audience. You've got to really think of them as individuals who are going to get interested in what you have to offer. We do something called a statement of authenticity with every one of our programs, where we work with the influencers that we're bringing in, and they sign off basically saying, yeah, you know what, I actually like this product I'm involved in. I actually am a fan of it and am happy to be a part of this program. And we bring that back to the brand so they know that, you know, it isn't just about, hey, I got paid, I'm going to go make a piece of content.
Marian, I think you have something to add.
Yeah, I have one problem with this in general, which is in market research you call it the horse-horn effect. Somewhere around 6 to 9 months of participating in a panel, you start to behave like a professional marketer. My concern is the horse-horning of the influence market, because I think if you go back to the same people and you go too deep, I think they become an extension of your marketing department, probably not as savvy or sophisticated, maybe not as knowledgeable, skeptical, whatever. I think we prefer the more one-night stand kind of relationships with some of our influencers, not to burn them, but we friend them, we participate with them. We want to have ongoing, but we're not looking to co-opt them into being an extension of the marketing team.
I would agree with that.
And I think that's a big, we got to be very careful. Otherwise, what you end up getting are, what do I say, armchair MBAs. So they're sitting on their, Barca lounge or in somewhere in southern Utah, and they're very smart and they're very committed to your product. But at some point, they've read one too many articles, and they start behaving like the marketing department. That's really risky.
Yeah, I would say most of the brands are not doing those types of programs overall. The ones that we work with are focused on how to find the right influencers to work with for a specific program and are much more campaign specific. And at this point, I think it's a great time for any advertiser to reach out to an influencer because no one is exclusive. You can get to anybody at any time. You just have to know what they're interested in and know what they're going to respond well to.
Talking about moving kind of from now that you've got your bucket of influencers, you've identified your target audience, their target audience. Talking specifically, and Marian, knowing that you cover a lot of different areas, especially life sciences and other places, if your content maybe isn't the sexiest content in the world, or you have influencers or just dry topics as far as the audience that they're reaching, how do you coach your clients? How do you guys sketch out the actual creative and pitching to not only make it authentic, as we've been discussing, but also eye-catching enough to activate the influencers?
So the eyeglass category might not be sexy or exciting to any of us sitting in this room or to many of the people listening, but if you're an optician and there's challenging and interesting new breakthroughs, there's new sciences, there's new customer profile, it does feel sexy to them. So I think it's know your audience, talk to your audience in terms that are meaningful to your audience, avoid jargon. I mean, I think one of the biggest risks we all face is we start to speak in marketers or PR or jargon speak, and with that, I think we lose a lot of the audience. It needs to be plain speaking. Also, I think it's a matter of asking people to do only in the environment in which they should be doing. So if I were launching a new pair of running shoes, I probably wouldn't be launching it to the same group of people that we have an obesity drug targeted at. And so, I need to be really careful that we're speaking to people that want to be speaking with us. We're using the people as conduits. It's really, a synonym for influence marketing as we look at it is friend of a friend. I need to find somebody who's going to be that friendly handshake. So I don't really know you, but I'm going to play geography with you to figure out who you know that I know. That's the kind of marketing I'm talking about. It's a little bit different, I think, what Paul and the agency do, which is why we buy services from companies like that for deeper, more meaningful programs. But what we're doing is really an extension of the media relations. Again, it was earned, paid, human. And I think if you're looking for a deeper, let's say I'm launching a brand new product, I very well might go to an agency to partner with us for much more deep and meaningful, again, short term in our case. I mean, I wouldn't want to have the same influencer involved for more than 90 days. I mean, saying that, maybe I would be okay at 120, but I don't want, this is not a marriage. This is not even a long-term relationship. This is come in, do a great job, say thanks very much, and both exit before the other became tainted.
It's a summer fling.
Exactly. And it's already the end of July.
Absolutely. Paul, I think the similar question to you, but I'd love to get your feedback on, especially when working with influencers that have built-in audiences, digital influencers. Everybody who is in this space probably gets as many phone calls as I do about how important video is to your marketing mix, how important the content is going down there. How do you approach the content strategy, especially in these longer-term relationships with clients, with influencers that already have very strong built-in audiences?
Great content will help make a great campaign, right? So much happens in the content phase of things. And there's a couple of things that we will just live and die by is combination of videos, images, GIFs, boomerangs, whatever they want to be. We always look for a combination of those in the campaign that we do. We create multiple length versions of content. So it isn't take one piece of content, push it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. It's different lengths of content that are optimized for each distribution platform. You know, in every case, distribution plays a very important role. Specifically, the talent's distribution and their social handles is the part where we're starting with everything. So understanding what their relationship is to their audience and then which platforms we're going to push out the strongest on play a very important role in this. That goes back to the objectives of awareness, sentiment, reach, conversion. Different platforms do different things, as well as different content types do different things. So for awareness, we might go with a shorter video. It might only be a 10-second video, for example, with the brand showing up somewhere in the first 3 seconds. Whereas for sentiment, we'll probably go with longer story-based videos that will drive sentiment and the positive comments, and that's what we see. That will perform better, probably more on YouTube than anything else in that case, right? You know, knowing that on Facebook you lose at least 50% of the audience in the first 3 seconds, no matter who's putting out that video. And if the brand is putting out the video directly, forget it. You're losing 90% of the audience in the first 3 seconds. So knowing the strategy will guide the content and the creative execution. The influencer needs to have a role in the creative process, but this is where we really stand out, and here what we do is we produce everything. We tell all our clients, you must take control of the creative execution in these programs to ensure you get what you want to get out of it.
And then I'm going to turn around. So in my mind, in the last couple of years, the most effective influencer campaign was when it was completely out of control. And that would have been the Ice Bucket Challenge, where people turned to people who turned to people. The quality of the video, I mean, everyone I participated in was bad to worse, and I think other people I know were even worse than that. But what was really smart was person to person. It was literally person to person. If I reached out to you, it was between me and you in the world. So it was like a third-party validation in the world watching my ask to you. And I think we need to remember that part of authenticity is sometimes not being so packaged. Even though I agree with everything Paul's saying around, you know, once there's creative work, you want it to look good. You don't want it doctored up. Less than I want it to be hacking into the creative film I just made to make it, quote, better, make it worse. But I go back to, if you'd come to me and ask my professional opinion on would Ice Bucket work, I would have been absolutely not. Nobody wants to look at somebody else soaking wet screaming into the camera. That's like a viral explosion of something. I mean, that's something that I think no one could have foreseen how that would tap into. Although a negative viral explosion, not of the same magnitude, was the antis against the Pepsi campaign. And I mean, my question to you guys before we sort of started this chat was, do we think that if they had worked the right influencer base before they rolled the Pepsi campaign out, would it have had a different outcome? I actually have the belief that had they pre-tested that way, it would have, because I think they would have heard from enough influencers the negativity, and they would have been able to adapt or reframe it. But I think there's a component of influencer marketing that really is market research. Because the first 10 and the next 10 and the next 10, as you're all going out, you're getting real feedback, and so you've got to really read the comments section. The other thing is there's things like Pinterest where what plays in a Facebook or Twitter environment may not play on Pinterest, but vice versa. Pinterest is a fabulous destination for influencer marketing. Yep. And in some categories, even things like automotive, super important.
Yep. And
so I think we've got to recognize, and I know I always default back to the B2B ones, Facebook, the Twitter, LinkedIn, but the YouTubes and the Pinterest and the Vimeo. There's so many others. Even things like SlideShare end up having a valid place in a B2B influencer.
We use, for ourselves, SlideShare and put a lot of our presentations we do up and data points and insights deck that we have. We put them all up on SlideShare.
Yeah. No, very, very true. And Paul, going back to your original, the brand putting the content out, all I hope is we didn't lose 90% of our audience because Cision put the webinar in place. So in 3 seconds. So really kind of going from there, this is kind of the section that I'm always concerned about when we're running the campaign is, all right, we're set up for success, we've identified, we're ready, we've got great creative. Knowing some of the stories, and we just talked about one with Pepsi there as far as influencer marketing and engagement happening in an audience. What, for people who are relatively new or really just getting started, what are the things to look for in execution as far as pitfalls? If you see a campaign potentially going the wrong way, you've engaged with the wrong influencers, the sentiment isn't coming, what are the things that you can do, and Paul, I'll start with you, to make sure that you're shepherding that message the way that you want to go and the steps to take if you see it going the wrong way?
Right. Well, I'll go back to it. Look, we take full control of the creative and production process in every influence marketing campaign that we do. We do not apologize for it. We are working with the brands and the marketers, and we are representing their best interests in reaching the audience. And to prevent issues with the campaign, simple things like FTC compliance, which is actually not that simple, but in a recent analysis said in 2016, 93% of all the Instagram influencer posts were incorrectly labeled. None of ours were in 2016. None of ours are in 2017. That's because we own it. So that's one of the things. Going back to the audiences, so, in every case we define about 10 different segments that we're going after. So while the campaign is starting to execute across the distribution plan, we are performance in each of those audiences. And if an audience is not performing, or let's do it the other way, an audience is performing very well, we double down in that audience. We go deeper with that audience, and we do sequential messaging and sequential content where we know what the follow-up piece of content is going to be. So if we see it's going really well with that audience there, we create another piece of content that we think that audience will like. So it's the optimization through that off of the distribution plan, and to kind of connect back to what I was saying earlier, awareness. If awareness is your primary thing, it's Facebook and Instagram are the top performing platforms flat out for awareness. For engagement, it's Instagram first, by far, one of the best for that. For sentiment, Facebook is the best for sentiment, right? YouTube follows very strongly in there, especially with the longer form content. You need to know that your content will perform on those platforms, optimize versus the audience, double down on it, especially when you're getting to the media part, the paid amplification, and keep hitting it. Keep hitting it until you get to those numbers that, for all intents and purposes, we look at everything and say this should be a predictable performance at the end of the day. I mean, you can't predict something if it goes or forecast something goes completely awry, right? With the talents in one way or the content in one way, as with any campaign, you can't see that stuff coming. But if you crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's and planned it out, you should be able to hit everything that you want to hit without many pitfalls. Yeah.
Really the same question as far as steering the execution phase the right way.
So we're very different because we're playing in real time.
Yep.
So basically we're pushing something out, or I shouldn't even say we're pushing it out, we're engaging in a conversation, and the conversation is going to zig and zag. And so the labor intensity for us is being sure we keep molding it, but it's a conversation. It's not a dictation. We're not sending them something and saying, do this. We're giving them, and one of the things we have to get our clients used to is when we're sending out products to be reviewed, they might not like the product.
Yeah.
We hope they like the product. We do our best to be sure we give them lots of words to play with where they're neutral. But you can't guarantee. It's a little bit like the restaurant review business. If you're managing restaurant chains, as we do, you absolutely want the reviewers to come in. You pray the reviewers have a great experience. You pray the food is good, the server is good, the ambiance is good, the air code didn't break that day. But you can't guarantee it. And so for us, it's our version of influence is both real-time and reality-based. So I don't have a perfect video. I hopefully have a perfectly imperfect conversation.
Yep.
And again, we're also working off of what I keep calling stratacutions, but we know what the strategy is. It's probably drilling down from the bigger brand. Mm-hmm. We're hoping that our conversational executions mirror as close as possible. Mm-hmm. It's impossible to guarantee anyone.
Yep.
100%.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So we move into perhaps the hardest thing for this industry especially is knowing what our success metrics are, being halfway there, but how does your team specifically measure against the goals? What are the most difficult challenges that you have? And for programs that are really just getting going, what are the most important metrics that you think you are important to report up to the C-level, to the senior folks that may not understand the nuance of some of the awareness metrics and things? And I'll start with you.
Sure. Again, going back to those objectives, each objective has different things that you're measuring. So if it's awareness, it's recall, and you're looking at the overall reach and probably even the efficiency of the reach. Mm-hmm. If it's engagement, you're looking at views, clicks, likes, comments, shares, right, the specificity of the engagement that was taking place there. Sentiment gets a little bit more interesting. We do sentiment analysis through the comments, looking at how people are talking about your brand through the content, how they're reacting to the content, what they're saying about all of it, mm-hmm. versus looking at the overall channel of the influencers' handles, or looking at it from a broad measure. We really go into the specificity of the language used around the content. And then action is looking at conversions, and that's something that's tracking pixels and yep. looking at all that activity there. I think one of the most important things to realize is there's no standard in measurement across all these platforms.
Yep.
So what is a view, what is a view, what is a view, what is a view on each platform, right?
Yep.
And how much time, Facebook might give you the percentage of people who get through to 3 seconds mm-hmm. of your video, and where is YouTube telling you that number, right? How many seconds are we in there? Mm-hmm. So it's very difficult to go across these platforms. So it makes yep. it database, absolutely, because you do have the numbers, yep. but then that's where the art comes in on top of it to be able to provide the analysis to say, look, this worked, mm-hmm. right? And this worked for the following reasons, and it hit the numbers yep. we said we were going to hit. Then there's brand lift surveys. Yeah. You can execute across those. They're not the easiest to do, and not the most, we feel maybe not the most effective on Facebook, for example, because you got to run the creative in a different way. And I think not having that standard makes it a little bit difficult to present.
Okay. Marian, I know that you have a very specific methodology as far as analyzing, and give us your feeling about, we hear a lot about ABE, especially here at Cision, and I know you.
No, I like them. I mean, yep. I'm one of the people who believe that as bad as they are, and you have to discount certain things, I always go back to discounting helping in post, because I'm buried in the 19th layer back.
Yep.
It's not the 40 million
right.
that you're going to give me to count with. ABEs on a discounted basis, where you take your earned media, you take your boosted media, you take the number of comments, and you sort of put it into a big bowl, sort of big hot pot, and come out with some calculations. The most important thing is you're working against something else. So if I know what I did in September, and I know what I did in November, if I know November's 2 times better than September, it doesn't matter if I started off with a flawed number. So for many months when we started off worrying about measurement, and I guess this is a good time to say, I'm happy to give away up to 100 copies through Compro of my book. The measurement chapter really deals with this. The measurement wasn't perfect, but the best we can do is work with a modified version of ABEs, because at least we know the marketers know how to value paid advertising.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say key to that for us is, Marian was talking about it as media, and we really look at it as should be measured as media.
Yep.
And in a lot of cases, the clients that we're working with, we're working off of media plans. Mm-hmm. And so not only do we have these specific goals of reach, awareness, sentiment, and conversion, but those might be measured in the terms of effective CPM, mm-hmm. CPV, CPE, cost per action, cost per install, yep. right? Those all can be measured for a campaign, mm-hmm. and this stuff needs to be approached in that way versus let's throw some stuff out there and see what sticks. I mean, we keep saying can be measured like media and needs to be measured like media.
Right, and this is human media. It sounds sort of very test tube babyish to refer to people as human media, but at the end of the day, you have one value, I have another value. It goes back even years ago. I mean, I was wrong. I think that people were going to have personal branding indexes, but they were going to have, all people are not going to be created equal. You are much more likely to want to speak to me about anything that doesn't relate to cooking. If you speak to me about cooking, I don't even know how to food shop properly, so you're not going to sell me on that. So people need to have PBIs, and they need to fit into various social aspects, which goes back to your other question of everybody isn't always an influencer. Mm-hmm. I could be a wine influencer, and I'm not necessarily going to be an influencer on education, or I could be an education influencer and not going to be an influencer on home renovation.
Very cool. And just to follow up on Marian's generous offer, and also to thank our partners at Compro who's helped us put on this event, especially Faye Shapiro. She has 100 copies of her book, and at the end of this, at the bottom of the hour here very shortly, we will be asking for some follow-up questions. If you respond to that survey, we will be able to get you a copy of the book, and we will follow up directly with you there. So thank you so much, Marian.
Perfect. Thank you.
It's go along with I'd get another copy, but I already have one. So. Before we wrap up and we move into Q&A, is there any, as onboarding new clients, I know you work with different size organizations.
Can I talk about onboarding new staff?
Okay.
In terms of, I think that the more newbie you are, the more innocent you are, the less biased you are about what is an influencer. So if you start with my exercises, give me 10.
Yep.
I literally say give me 10. We've just been working on something in the diabetes category, give me 10. And then, okay, one of the 10 happened to be somebody related to Jocelyn. Okay, now look at this Jocelyn-related person, now give me 10 from them and build it out. I think training your junior people to recognize that they really are experts at pattern recognition because they've lived their lives looking at patterns,
yep.
Showing them how to harness that innate understanding they have of patterns so that they can build out lists, I think is super important.
Yeah.
It's not something you need to be old and wise for. It's something you need to be really, really quick at making nonlinear leaps, which is the way the hyperlink world works.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, Paul, same as far as advice to the comms professionals on the phone at brands and agencies, any one piece of advice that you give as we close out and move over to Q&A?
Yes. We many times look at what we do and look at it through a different framing and context, which is the mobile device, specifically the mobile device. If you think about it and look at your mobile device, you know pretty much the size of the screen is set. The device itself is set. You're either iOS or Android. The applications you're going to use, we know where you spend the majority of your time. Facebook, something Google related, something Amazon related, right, where people are spending the majority of their time. But what is the best way to communicate a marketing message through a mobile device at this point?
Yep.
It is not transporting the display advertising to mobile. Utter failures there. It is not buying an in-feed placement on Facebook. We're seeing data that suggests the first 3 seconds a brand putting a video on Facebook and sponsoring within the feed, which I'm sure everyone is seeing, sponsored feed, sponsored post, sponsored post, sponsored post. The performance is so bad you wouldn't even believe it. 30-second completion does not even exist. Interrupting with pre-rolls and all that, not liked at all, not effective. And so a lot of times what we need to understand is we are solving for the mobile advertising format. We are solving for the way to advertise to people on mobile through influence marketing because it is what cuts through the clutter. It is what performs the best. And even getting a influencer to boost a brand's video sees such massive performances. Forget about the influencer creating a great piece of content about a product. That is, the performance is unbelievable. And so that is a different way of looking at what this is actually solving for. And so when you kind of have that understanding of it, you see it in context, you realize this is a very, very, very big piece of the marketing.
One other thing just to stop there is we have to all assume that all influencers don't agree with all of us. I think one of the mistakes we make is to assume that the kind of people that work in marketing are the only influencers on the planet. And I think if you understood kind of what the Trump campaign tapped into in terms of fierce influence, Joe's six-pack, and the Joe Sixpack sort of demographic was really a core influencer. And to negate that is to sort of suffer from the, what do we call, New York, LA kind of arrogance, and I think we all make those mistakes. Influencers do not have to be people like us. They don't have to share our attitudes, beliefs, or media preferences. And I think we need to understand the importance of those, of people with different points of view but with strong followings.
Yep. No, 100%. And Paul, playing off your side, we did a study last year with Outsell about the value and from CMOs as far as looking at the value and ROI of earned media, and we had influencer marketing in that segment versus their paid. And we're doing a similar study as well right now with the Management Report. I've seen the early results, and even more so now, we're continuing to see that the paid campaigns, the mobile, the interruptive, everything that you talked about is decreasing both in B2C and B2B. So we really do have to reinvent. So I want to, before we move to questions, just want to once again thank you both for taking us through this. We're going through the questions now, but I'm going to start. I think this is a pretty good opening tactical question. And is there a best way to do that that initial opening approach to an influencer, i.e. the channel that you're reaching them? Is it phone? Is it email?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I know. And I know, is it social if they're social native and that's where they are? So, Mary, let's start with you, I think.
So it's all the above. So if it's me, the geriatric version, I am going to advocate we start with an email. I know some of our junior team is probably listening and participating. They do a fabulous job out of our Phoenix office. I think they often start to follow someone and they engage with them by sharing content that they share back. They start a conversation and they take it into every format, including texting. So I think, but to me, the important thing is it's whatever format you are best at conversationally, because the operative phrase of the introduction is it has to be a conversation. It can't be a monologue. It can't be a pitch letter. It needs to be a conversation. So what is, as little as possible can I say, to get somebody to answer me so we start a ping pong and not just me shooting hoops.
Nice.
That's good. Okay.
I like that. So starting with that as the base, right, because the influencers that Marian is talking about are at a very small scale overall, but have a lot of influence amongst their small audience. And kind of working your way up, you go from just individual outreach to, I'll give you some anecdotes, some social influencers you have to work through their mom. To their dad. Some cases they do have people around them as you kind of work your way up, and so it could be business managers, it could be agents, it could be publicists. You get a lot of different people in the mix depending on their scale. So I think no matter what, you need to know about them. You need to understand who they are. Building that relationship with them is great. Just don't troll them. We've seen, like I said, a bunch of different cases of that recently, and those come out in a couple of articles. And our CEO, Steve, wrote a great article about please stop trolling influencers. And so as long as you do that well and you don't think of them as a media outlet and through you I can reach your fans, you think about them as individuals, then you'll be fine whatever form of media you take to communicate with them.
So there might be a few situations where it's okay to think of them as a media outlet. So, for example, we do a lot of pro bono work in the wounded warrior and their caregiver area. And for people who really share that commitment to wounded vets and their family members, it's absolutely okay to turn to them and say, hey, can you blast this out? It would be completely tacky to do that over a lemonade or over a new bicycle. So I think you have to really understand the situation in which you're working. In the paid product, in a commercial product area, I agree completely. In the cause area, and we do a lot of it, it's really okay.
What tactics, and we're getting a lot of questions about for folks that are either in the nonprofit area, they're low minimal budget cause area. What tactics, how do you approach that differently? Do you look at influencers? Do you shrink that list a little bit knowing that you're not going to be really doing that? Tell us a little bit about how you approach that.
So actually, I think the amazing thing about influencer marketing like I'm talking about, which can be massified, the only boundary is your own creativity in building out your list. Because you're not paying for media. You're not paying to engage with the influencer. You are trading information, knowledge, and a sense of community in exchange for them to sharing this content. So I think it's a question of who's your first 10, what's your 10 by 10, and what's a 10 by 10 by 10. And at that point, you really don't need to worry about money. You need to worry about keeping the conversation going. and it's the ping pong. If you put the racket down and the ball comes back at you, you drop, you're out of the game. I mean, that's the biggest problem is if you're doing influencer really well in real time, real community, real people, you're probably not getting any real sleep.
So I want to follow that up because we're getting a lot of questions or additional examples, and people are loving the examples that you're giving. So Paul, let's start with you. Give us one campaign that you love that you guys didn't run, and what your favorite campaign was that you guys have run in 2017.
Oh, boy. The Volvo campaign that we did so far this year with Jimmy Chin has been absolutely fantastic. I think the quality of the creative, how we worked with Jimmy is just absolutely wonderful. And anyone we've met and had conversations with who knew Jimmy, you either know Jimmy or you don't. And if I didn't know him prior to this campaign, but everyone who did know him was like, oh my God, this stuff was just so him. It really, really, really connected very well. And so,
would you give us a quick just overview of that campaign, like exactly how you guys brought that to market?
Probably the best thing to do is just just search it because you will find it. And I think it really helps to bring to life his thoughts and views on the Volvo and the brand overall. So it is very premium in how it looks. And, we find overall that the premium content performs so much better than the stuff that looks more amateur-like overall. But that being said, that's one that really has stood out for us and we're, very excited about. There are a lot of campaigns that we do see, and they really run the gamut of things that, oh, yeah, that was pretty clever. That's good. That's good content. That's a really good idea to, oh, wow, there's somebody standing there holding a product in a selfie, and that's the end of that. And some salad dressings earlier this year just got a bunch of people to almost like selfie portraits, but without any creative strategy behind it. It was just, look, I'm standing here with the salad dressing, or it's in the background of my shot. I feel like some of those really lack the creativity needed to make one of these influencers fans go, oh, wow, check that out. That's kind of cool. Instead of, oh, look, they just got paid to stand there with the salad dressing. Or whatever the product is. So I think those are the things for us, and there are thousands of them, thousands of pieces of content going up every day that are hashtag ad attached to brands on Facebook or Instagram, and you start looking at it overall as an industry, and you start realizing there is a wide berth between the things that really perform well and are great, and to things that are just like, that was the lazy way of doing stuff.
Good question, Marian.
Well, to me, probably today the influencer stuff that's most effective starts with a print piece or a TV piece. So if Penelope Green at the New York Times does a big piece on sleep and your client's embedded there, then your client goes out and sort of starts tweeting it out and pushing it out and then speaking to sleep experts all in a non-linear but kind of organized fashion. That to me is where there's really sizzle because there's no risk then. You start up with a credible piece of content. It wasn't co-created. It was created by somebody else, a third-party intermediary. It's then shared, and you then enter into conversation. So I would say, when I think that it wasn't my campaign, we ended up being quoted in there, but this whole I didn't sleep is a status symbol. It feels like every time you turn around now, you're reading about all the importance of a great mattress, changing your mattress out every 3 years, a room that sleeps appropriate. So I'd say that was a campaign. Certainly there are a number of mattress companies out there that have been behind it and pushing it forward. One of our campaigns that was super effective, we just worked for the Household, which is the royal family in England, to promote some work that Prince Harry and Prince William and Princess Catherine were doing around the Wounded Warrior category, specifically to benefit Mass General and the Bob Woodruff Foundation. And we found that as soon as we put content out there that came from the Household, people just ate it up. They wanted to be a little bit closer to the royal family by just sharing something that felt morally correct. Stand up and worry about the mental health of warriors who've been hurt.
Fantastic. I think that we'll give you guys back 10 minutes of your day. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Paul, Marian, thank you so much for your insight, and we will hope you all have a wonderful day and a wonderful rest of the week. Thank you.